me anyway. I think that is something that the public needs to hear. We have with us this evening Detective Audrey McCray and Detective Christina Moore from the Special Victims Unit of the Brunswick County Sheriff's Office. And we welcome you, ladies. We're going to talk this evening a little bit about human trafficking. I don't believe that in this day and age, there's enough information out there that people would take this seriously. I've been through it. It's not fun, not personally, but a good friend. And I really want people to be aware. So, can you tell us a little bit about Special Victims Unit and what your responsibilities are in that capacity?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been with the Special Victims Unit since 2020 with the Sheriff's Office. And so what we typically investigate, we investigate all sexual assaults, both children and adults. We also investigate child physical abuse and also elder abuse. And then whenever there are human trafficking, we typically assist other larger agencies, such as like federal agencies like the Federal Bureau of Investigation or Homeland Security.
Right.
Interesting. You didn't say that you investigate domestic violence, so that's not part of your area?
We do. So if it's a felony, we investigate any assault that's a felony.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I've been reading some stats and it scares me. I'm told that North Carolina is 15th nationwide. I'm told that in the state alone, Wilmington is 4th, given the fact they have a port and also that they are close to 95.
Yes.
Now, can you tell us how much trouble or how much?
Before you go any further, 4th in what? You didn't tell us. Or 15th in what? It could be in basket weaving. I just need to know what that was.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was reading the statistics nationwide, and North Carolina is 15th, number 15th in human trafficking nationwide. In the state of North Carolina, Wilmington is 4th in the cities for human trafficking. And you know what? That's right next door.
It is.
Yes, ma'am. Cut the bridges.
Yeah. So how about tell us about Brunswick County. Are we is it that prominent here?
So as you mentioned, Wilmington is one of the hot spots, and also on the other end of the county, you have Myrtle Beach as well. And so those are two huge hot spots. So it would kind of be naive of us to say that Brunswick County doesn't have it whatsoever. I'm sure that it is prevalent here. However, human trafficking is still kind of an underground thing that's kind of still being kept secret. I think there's more light that is being shown on it lately. I think that it's something that people are starting to hear about. They're starting to get educated about it. They're starting to pick up on exactly what it looks like and where it may be happening and stuff. I know that it personally does happen here in Brunswick County, but it's just, this is such a rural county that it might look a little bit differently than it does in Wilmington or in Myrtle Beach or a large metro area like that.
How so? How does it look different?
Well, since it's it's country and it's rural, they're able to keep it a better secret than they keep it hidden. Exactly. They don't have as many eyes on them. They don't have as many people nearby. If it's being done in a house down, and typically they can get transported out to other cities where they are forced to do work, whether that be to Myrtle Beach or to Wilmington, and they may be typically kept in Brunswick County, like in a residence somewhere. But if they're kind of out in the middle of the country and they don't really know, exactly where they're at, or people aren't nearby to kind of notice suspicious activity at certain houses and stuff like that, then it's kind of hard to get people to report things like that if there just aren't people nearby to see it.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because I always thought it was the other way around, that they would be more prevalent in the cities and easier to hide because there's more people.
I guess it's kind of like a double-edged
Yeah,
sword. It kind of either
interesting.
way. Yeah.
Where I'm originally from, which is Albany, New York, there's a big problem up there
Yeah.
too. So they what is it? Yeah, New York's number
Yeah.
one. It's
In something.
yeah. I've talked with many law enforcement officers up there, and it's a tough job for them because they shut one down and 3 others pop up.
Right. Exactly.
That's the question I would have is how much of an effect can you guys have, or are you having, and how can people help you with that?
Well, I think the first step is education all across the board. And I think that's for everybody. I will say that before I got into law enforcement and, while I was growing up as a teenager, and, I'm from the Tampa, Florida area. So that's another huge hotspot with things like that. Whether human trafficking, drug trafficking, that type of stuff. Yes, it's huge down there. And I was kind of a little bit naive and maybe a little bit ignorant to what human trafficking was growing up, because when I thought of human trafficking, I kind of thought of like a scary guy picking somebody up in a van and kind of just like taking them away from their house. And that's just not what it is at all. It isn't. And so I think the first step is for people to truly understand what it is and what it might look like and what the signs are, so they don't fall victim to it. And also they can look out for the other people that might be a little bit more vulnerable than themselves to make sure that they don't get trapped in it as well.
Following on that, you said something before which intrigued me a little bit, is suspicious activity. The average person may not know what suspicious activity is. What should they be looking for and what should they report?
Especially in this area,
Yeah.
in a rural area.
What would be considered specific activity? Tongue is stuck. So
I just kind of want to go back to something that Audrey was talking about, how she grew up in the Tampa, Florida area. I actually grew up in the Wilmington, North Carolina area. And I'm definitely with her on the fact that when I was younger, before I got into law enforcement, I was very naive to that. And education being something to get people more involved and more aware of what's going on. She and I have actually been to a couple of workshops out here in Southport and as well as Wilmington.
Good.
And one of the places that came out to talk to us, I believe it's called a Safe Place.
Yeah.
It's called a Safe Place.
First Fruit Ministries.
First Fruit
Yeah.
Ministries, that's correct. And she talks about just being able to go out to different like homeless camps and everything like that. So I think that's something to kind of look out for if you see an excessive amount of maybe homeless camps or something like that. You, if nothing else, talk to the people and make sure that they're, okay. Because a lot of times they're trying to get away from a domestic situation, or they're just trying to improve upon their lives. And that's why First Fruit Ministries actually has a place for them to go to help them get those resources and everything like that. But I know with the sheriff's office, just in general on our Facebook page, we've often stressed, if you see something, say something. If you see something that doesn't feel right to you, and I've always been a bit advocate for trusting your gut. If you see something that doesn't feel right to you, then say something to someone, because even if we go out and it's not anything, we would rather find out that it's
Right.
nothing than find out that it was
Yeah.
something that got ignored.
good point.
I agree with you on the education. And I was reading that last year in 2022, the Department of Homeland Security was codified in the Countering Human Trafficking Act. And that is pretty much training and education. And it's so overdue,
Yeah.
because people don't know
They don't.
anything about it, and they're not going to until they learn about it.
Right.
And also the other thing that really is crazy is that there are only 16 Department of Homeland Security offices in this country.
Yeah.
So what in the world? Because they are trafficking, their particular age is 12. That's a child, and Would you explain to the audience the different kinds of trafficking? When they traffic them, what are they taking them to?
So with trafficking, there's two typical types. It's either forced labor trafficking or commercial sex trafficking. So it could be either one or the other, or it could be both at the same time. It really just depends. So with the commercial sex, that's, obviously, what people typically would consider prostitution. And then forced labor, see things like farms, or, they're forced to work, wherever, when they don't want to work there, and they're forced to stay there.
So if they are taken for work,
Mm.
like say here in Brunswick County, it's rural. There's a lot of farms here.
Yes,
ma'am.
There's a lot of farm work. So there could be a lot of that here, right?
There could be,
There could
yeah,
be.
yeah, absolutely.
Wow. And they also stated that when you are looking for it, the places that they would go to look for people would be shelters, bus stations, any place where there are young people who are vulnerable.
Yeah.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then also online is a big
Mhm.
place
Yes,
as
ma'am.
well to find people and to kind of sell them,
Mm-hmm.
false promises on, whether they're looking to start up a relationship, or
Right.
if they're looking, if, you know, offering a young teenage girl the opportunity to become a model, or to come out in an acting gig or something
Mhm.
like that, and they kind of build that relationship from
Mhm.
there on, and it kind of progresses into something differently than what it first was
Yeah.
advertised as.
Wow. You have a question?
Yeah, you're done. Go ahead, Dan. Kick in on that one.
So again, I hate to circle back to New York, but I'm somewhat familiar with what was going on up there
Yeah.
because I owned a massage studio.
Okay.
So the local police department there, they actually had where they would come in and investigate you roughly every 6 months. It wasn't like a hard time, but and they actually would send in undercover.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being, not that we had no issues, but I'm trying to put this the polite way, the Asian massage parlors,
Yeah.
were, it was well known up there that they were
Yes.
trafficking.
Yeah.
They would bring them in. And I difference between a city and rural, I'm sure, but is that something you see around here also, where they bring them in? Like they were primarily coming from China, was my understanding from the officers.
I know that was a big thing in Wilmington, which I still think that it currently
It
is.
is, yeah.
But just because they have so many more businesses like that than Brunswick
Mhm.
County does, just like you said, the massage parlors, there's also nail studios, like
That's
nail
another one,
salons
yep,
and stuff
yep.
like that.
Yep.
So that's another great example of what labor trafficking might look like. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, having talked with the officers, and again, I'm by no means an expert on it, but they would go in and they would find the entire staff was brought in.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
they would address it, arrest whomever, and 2 months later it would reopen
Pop
with
right
another
back
one and
up.
do the same
Yeah.
thing again. My understanding was it was primarily gangs running those. Is that what you see down here? Is it gang? How is that?
And when I first, explained what the SVU does and how I said that we assist the other federal agencies with this, it's the reason I say that is because there's such complex and like lengthy investigations that the Brunswick County Sheriff's Office ourselves, we don't have the resources and the time for us to take on every single case ourselves. However, if somebody were to come forward and say they were human trafficked, or they have concerns that somebody might be being trafficked, then we're kind of that initial first step as far as like gathering information in as much detail as possible. And then that's when we contact, whether it's the FBI or HSI, Homeland Security. And then they're kind of the ones that take over, and we assist them in whatever we can as far as what's needed to do in the county. But for the most part, they're the ones that are kind of bring that case home, just because we don't have the money or the resources in order to, I mean, those investigations can take years and years to come to fruition, because it's like as soon as you find out one thing and you peel back one layer, you find 10 more. It's just you
Absolutely.
keep just
Yes,
going
sir.
and going and going.
I see a
Um,
list. They actually have a list of people who are human traffickers. And that freaked me right out. So these people are aware that Homeland Security knows this is what they do,
mhm.
Yes, ma'am.
and they're on the streets because they can't prove anything, obviously.
Right.
Holy cow.
There's an old line, knowing and proving are two different things.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yes,
but
ma'am. That's
My
absolutely
goodness,
true.
they have their names and they're this long list,
Yeah.
and that's what they're known
Yeah, but
for.
most of the time, you're never going to see them with getting their hands dirty. They've
No.
got someone else doing what they
Mhm.
want.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And they're just the end result, seeing the money or what power.
Yeah.
Mm.
And sometimes it's really hard to, investigate or, get a victim to come forward,
Mhm.
because just throughout all of the trauma, and whether it's fear or coercion or whatever the case may be, if they've made, that victim solely dependent on
Oh, yeah.
them, and, financially, and if they get them addicted to
Right.
drugs, and if,
Yep.
that's their stable, that's where they live. That's what they've known their whole entire, teenage and adult life. It's almost impossible to get them to leave that life
And it
until they're
also,
ready.
you're right. And beyond that, for many times, the cultures that are coming from the policemen were not their friends.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
we have a very different set of officers and sheriff up and down the line
Yeah.
compared to other countries where they're
Right.
corrupt and involved.
Yep.
So that's their knowledge and that's where they're coming from.
Mhm.
And to get them to come forward to you is very, very difficult.
Very.
I know.
Yeah.
And then you throw in the fact that they're the most likely illegal to begin with. So there's another issue.
Yep.
Well, I'm sure both
Mhm.
Audrey and I have faced someone who's tried to come forward to us and then have just stopped talking just because they're terrified. They're scared. They're worried about what they might lose, who might come after them. I mean, I know I have, like you probably have too. I mean, it just, the way they start these victims out in this is they make them these promises, I'll make sure you have money, or if you have a drug of choice, I'll provide that for you, a place to live, and this, that, and the other. And then it just accelerates to, now this is what you're going to have to do for me because
Yeah.
I provide you with all of these things. And yes, most of those victims, they don't typically want to come forward because, like Audrey was saying, it's the only lifestyle they've ever known for so many
Right.
years.
I think that's why they initiated the Blue Campaign.
Mhm.
And the Blue Campaign, they target young people,
Mhm.
and they have people now in the colleges
Mhm.
Mhm.
and youth organizations, and it's pretty much education.
Yeah.
And I think that's so very important. But I think the Blue Campaign is just like 2 years old, isn't it?
I think it's relatively new. I think a
Okay, I'm
lot of human trafficking education and all the programs and the campaigns, I think it's all relatively new.
For
But
the
I think
benefit
it's,
of all our people listening, explain the Blue Campaign.
I'm gonna let you handle that
I've
one 'cause I'm
only
not super
heard of it.
familiar.
I'm not too familiar with it. I've heard it said a few times here and there, but
I'll tell you what I know.
okay. Thank you for that.
Question of
It-
good.
It started in 2021,
Okay.
really took off in
Mhm.
2021. And what they did was they put people who were trained into the colleges,
Okay.
into youth groups, anywhere where young people started their life,
Mhm.
so to speak, and educated them and talked to them about human trafficking and explaining to them what to look for, how to be careful.
Yeah,
And I think it's a great program.
I think so too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's fairly new. Like you said, I
Right.
don't know how many employees they have, if they have enough, because let's face it, we've got a lot of places in our country that we have youth.
Yes.
So
Do you have any programs that you work with that get into the schools to protect them, if you will, or is that something really not your department, so to speak?
I mean, we have SROs in our schools resource officers and everything like that. As far as the programs that the schools offer specifically, I can't say that I'm super familiar. Not saying that it wouldn't be beneficial to have programs like that
Well, that's what
within
my
our
thought
school
is that,
system.
if you guys could, or people around the country go into
Yeah.
a school and present these kind of things to people and make kids aware. 'Cause,
Yeah.
first of all,
Absolutely.
they all think they're invincible.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
That's definition of a teenager. I'm
Mhm.
invincible.
Yeah.
But they don't also realize the consequences of action. So they need to at least hear it. And you're not going to affect everybody, but if you reach that 1, 2, or 10 people, you've done something.
Absolutely.
Of
Yeah.
course.
So
Yeah. I think with Brunswick County experiencing such a huge explosion in population and growth, and it's crazy. I've been here in this county myself for about 7 years now, and just from my time from when I first moved here to now, it's just crazy how much I've seen it grow and see how many people have moved here and just how much progress we're making. So I can only imagine from like a native that has lived here their whole entire life. So I think we're trying to catch up to all that, and I think it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think that there's a lot of good things in the future. But I think Brunswick County is just kind of not really behind the curve, but it's just has been such a huge explosion recently that we're just trying to catch back up with everybody. But I think that's something that should definitely be done for sure. I know that Stat USA, I don't know if they go into the schools, but I do know that they would come and regularly speak with the women in our detention facility. And Stat USA is Stand Against Trafficking. And so they're a really good program. And so they come and they speak with the women in the jail who either have been victims of human trafficking or, obviously they're at risk because they're, they might be young, they already have a criminal record, they, it might be, addicted to drugs. So they're already in that vulnerable category of, falling victim to it. So I know that they do a lot of great work around the county and in Wilmington. But as far as in the schools, I'm not entirely sure about programs in there, but I think that's super important.
Are the resource officers that are put in the schools, are they trained so that they can talk about this with the kids?
I believe so. I think everybody goes through like a basic, we have, what is that called? The yearly training that we have to do.
The
Refresher?
Yeah, in-service training. Yes.
In-service
So
training.
forgot the word for it for a second, but yes, they have designated one specific training for everybody that has to take it for trafficking and so, signs like that. Yeah.
And I would tell you, as a retired high school principal, those SROs are trained.
Yes.
And they're out there looking. And
Absolutely.
very often, they were my first line of defense, finding out what's going on because kids developed rapport with them.
Yeah, they
And
do.
they would
It's
come
the same.
and they
It's
would
the exact same with us. They are our first line of defense, finding out what's going on with these children, and they know that if they have any questions, maybe that we might have the answer to, they know that we're always available for them. So
Yes.
you're absolutely right as far as them being the first line of defense. They are.
I've been in a principal in 2 different states, and I would tell you, I've never had a bad SRO.
Yes,
They're
they are.
hand trained, they're hand picked,
Yep.
and they're dedicated to their job, to
Yep.
helping kids. And I'm sure that helps you guys because, as with me,
Absolutely.
they can give you the leads you need to make it happen.
Yeah.
These children.
Yeah.
You know,
They
they see
spend
them every
every day
day.
with them.
Yep.
And so,
That's
and
great.
we get to build relationships with the SROs because they know that they can text or call us. And if they have concerns about something, they can just say, hey, can you come out here and talk to this kid? I have some concerns. And,
Absolutely.
we go out there. So it's,
And very
it
often
works.
it's that SRO that can break down the barrier for that kid to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You
100%,
trust the SRO, the SRO trusts you.
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
connection is there and it happens.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Again, I just cannot say enough good things about SROs and the work that you guys do with them
Mhm.
for kids.
Yeah.
I've been a
Thank you.
principal too many years and I've seen too many kids go the wrong way. So
Yeah.
anything we do to pull them back in is a good thing.
Absolutely.
We can go to break.
Not really. She didn't tell me that. I got another
Yeah.
minute. So you watched the lady over there. I used to be in charge. I'm not sure when I lost that power, but
Do you want to start something?
not me.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay.
Okay. We are-
Video is good.
We are doing fine. One quick question for you. I noticed when you mentioned before you work with the FBI and you work with Homeland Security,
Mhm.
you didn't mention state SBI or State Bureau of Investigation. You guys separate from them? Do you work with them, or is that something that doesn't happen?
There have been a few times where I've worked alongside them, not necessarily with human trafficking cases, but I have a personal contact that I worked through a human trafficking case with the FBI. And her name is Agent Kukala, and she works through the Wilmington field office. And then HSI, we have a really good relationship with them through the sheriff's office, especially dealing with child pornography. We typically use them to analyze all of our electronic devices that we might seize from search warrants and stuff like that. So it's not that we don't use the SBI, it's just that we have much more deeper personal relationships with the SBI or the FBI and the HSI.
And you must be a trained person, because you got me right to the point where we have to say, stay tuned while we pay a few bills.
It seems like every other store is now selling CBD in some form or another. But did you know that Wilmington has just one local CBD company? I'm talking about Carolina Pure. Family owned and operated, they are Wilmington's first and only CBD company that makes quality hemp products right here in town, including tinctures, topicals, and pet products. Their hemp is sourced from local farmers, and they support area musicians and nonprofits. Check us out at carolinapureshop.com.
Veteran Awareness sponsored by You Are Not Alone. Today's veteran homeless rate is approximately 19,750, and the numbers are declining because of the various veteran programs. If you are a veteran you know is homeless, please call 877-4AID-VET. This is a confidential and toll-free call. From this veteran to other veterans, please be there to help our brother and sister veterans. Again, the number is 1-877-424-3838. And thank you for your service.
Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, located at 8210 River Road, Southport, is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with the Tackle Box open Monday through Saturday, 7 to 6. Marine Service Pro is a full Suzuki and Tohatsu dealership. They deal in pre-owned boats, full service and repair, with certified technicians in all engines, and fiberglass specialists. The Tackle Box offers fresh local seafood, live bait, a tackle shop, and fish packing and shipping. They also offer a full-service U-Haul dealership. Spend time with Leon or Jenny for one-stop shopping at Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, 8210 River Road, Southport.
This show is also sponsored by Dr. Tony Maglione. Dr. Tony is a cardiologist practicing in Wilmington. He accepts Medicare patients, and his office is located across the street from New Hanover Regional Medical Center at 2032 17th Street. The office number is 202-1071. Dr. Tony is an author whose last book is Rules for Conservative Patriots, and it can be purchased on Amazon. His website is www.drtonymag.com.
What a great place we all call home. From colorful sunsets to panoramic coastal views. The best attractions are its people, a community of friends and family. J.K. Summers, attorney at law, recognizes this fact and is proud of his work to protect their rights. Put your trust in him to prepare wills and trusts, real estate transactions, contract and LLC creations, and criminal, traffic, and civil matters. Visit oakislandlaw.com or call 910-253-5572. J.K. Summers, attorney at law.
Welcome back to halftime at All Things Brunswick. And we've paid our bills, and we're having a great discussion on human trafficking and really learning quite a bit, because we want to thank our two sheriff deputies that are in here. If I called them police officers, I'd be in a lot of trouble, because I know what Sheriff England would be doing to me if I said that. So they are deputies, and we'll leave it that way to keep me out of trouble. But anyway, Mary has a phone number you need to pick up.
Well, there are several phone numbers. If you should see something that you're or if you think that, like our Detective Moore said, if you have a gut feeling that something isn't right, you can call 1-866-347-2423. Now, and these calls and tips are anonymous. You do not have to give your name. And I'm sure that you have local numbers that they could call as well.
The only number I know off the top of my head for the sheriff's office is 910-253-2777. And that's to reach the sheriff's office during business hours, which is Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. However, they can always call 911 and
Right.
request to speak to a deputy.
Mhm.
And then obviously if a detective is needed, then deputies, they have the responsibility of contacting a
Mhm.
detective at that time.
The more tips that they get, the better off they are.
Yeah.
And as I said before, if you're afraid, you don't want to give.
And we
that's-
also online on brunswicksheriff.com, we also have a website tip where they can go on the website and actually put in an anonymous tip for us to check things
Great.
out.
And if they want to be anonymous, they can be kept that way. correct?
Absolutely.
Which is
Yes.
important.
Yeah.
Great. You said something a little bit ago, Audrey, about you were involved in a human trafficking case.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
So this was one of the cases where a victim ended up not being cooperative, and no fault to her, but she just was not ready to fully come out and say everything. But I was contacted by Agent Kukala with the FBI, where she was conducting a human trafficking investigation on a suspect that did live in Brunswick County, and she believed that one of the victims was local in Brunswick County, and she asked me to reach out to her. Ultimately, she did arrest him for trafficking the suspect, but the victim that I was involved in, she didn't want to move forward with the case. But there were other victims that were found.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. And it's and it is a lengthy process.
Absolutely. Yes. Those investigations can take years.
I guess I can understand why the victims then kind of back off and say, I've had enough,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it does take years. How
That
sad.
and yeah, I mean, there's just so many barriers as to
Mhm.
why they might, decide not to move forward, or they're not ready, or whatever the case may be, whether it be fear, or they just don't want to deal with it, with, how she was saying, the fear of possible, retaliation, or
Mhm.
somebody, doing something to them for speaking up.
Well, I think, and I hope that I am correct, because I hope it will make a difference, but I think that's where the education
Absolutely.
and the awareness
Mhm.
comes in. January is Awareness Month for
Mhm.
human trafficking, and I'm really happy that they've designated a year. It should be the first month of the year because everybody should be aware all year.
Absolutely.
But these new programs that they're coming out with to educate, especially young people,
Mhm.
I think are important, because I agree. A young person gets caught up in this everyday thing, they're not going to change.
Right.
It's how they are going forward.
Oh, you're done
Am I right?
pontificating over here. You're absolutely correct. I was going to say, yes, I agree. But my concern, and you said something that I understand from experience view, that sometimes investigations go forever, or 2 years, a year, whatever.
Mhm.
What happens to those victims while you're watching? I hate to say it that way, but you got some kids that are involved in trafficking,
Mhm.
and they're the victims out there, and they're being trafficked, and and the FBI wants to sit back and watch 2 years of this so they can pull in the big fish. That doesn't help that kid for 2 years. So I'm not being critical. I'm asking a question.
No, of course not.
No, I mean, I think it really just depends on. It's hard to give like an exact answer, because each case is just so different, and each set of circumstances is just so different. So you just have to work with what you have at that time. But ultimately, for everybody, the safety of everyone involved is obviously the number one priority. But so they don't like to waste any time if they can get people to safety. But I think there's a little bit of a difference between children being trafficked versus adults being trafficked. Because obviously children, that's everybody's a priority, but children is kind of more of like, okay, we need to go ahead and do what we got to do to get them to safety.
You just brought up a point that I was going to bring up with the influx of people coming across the border now, children, adults. Are you seeing an uptick in trafficking? Because it's out there that they talk about that with all the increase of people crossing the border, that inevitably, I mean, there's more drugs, there's more human trafficking. Is that actually, would you say that's true, or is that hyperbole that's being used? Somewhere in between?
I think trafficking is still so underground in Brunswick County that I can't myself say if there's an uptick or yet.
Yeah, I don't-
Uptick or
Okay.
not yet.
I don't want to say
I
that that's not accurate. I think
Yeah.
it's just at this point it's so underreported and like she was saying underground that we're just not made aware of it yet.
Yeah.
And that's my perception
Mhm.
is,
Yeah.
you know, you're seeing that like at the tip of the iceberg,
Right.
so to
Correct.
speak.
Right.
And, you know, I think there probably is some truth to it, but
Absolutely.
you
Of
just
course.
don't
I'm sure
know
there
what's
is.
happening.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Right.
hear things on the news. You never know what to believe anymore.
Yeah.
But I would think that it's got to be part of it. I mean,
Absolutely.
and,
I'm sure it
Mhm.
adds to the problem, but I don't think us on the receiving end of seeing the issues, I don't think we've seen all of that
Right.
yet. I don't think it's gotten to us yet.
I mean,
but-
I've heard about the I-95 corridor. They come up, they
Right.
come in through Texas, they come in through Florida.
Mhm.
I think you mentioned
Yep.
Tampa before.
Yep.
Miami, I think, is another one there.
Yep.
They frequently
Miami's a
come
huge
in.
one. Yep.
I'm sure Wilmington, because port cities.
Right.
Straight up the East Coast.
Is there anything we as individuals can see maybe I'm not on I-95 or something like that? Is there something we can look out for that maybe we could, that's a tough one, I know, but
It
I'm
is.
just
Yeah.
curious.
Head, I can't think of any one thing
I'm
that
sure
you
they hide
could
it
look-
well. Yeah.
that you could look for. I mean, people who are doing illegal things don't want to look illegal.
Right.
You know, they want to check the tail lights and those headlights and make sure their tags are good and they're not getting, pulled over or anything like that. Specifically, the only thing I could think of, obviously, if you see a child looking like they need help in a car, alert somebody, but and definitely keep close eye on those billboards and everything, because when we end up with those Amber Alerts and everything like that, and if you see a vehicle that looks like it, let someone know, definitely. But other than
Yeah.
that, I can't think of any one specific thing
Not
to
on
look for.
I-95, but
Mm-mm.
I feel like in neighborhoods or
Mhm.
houses or buildings, like if you see, a large number of people going in and out of that residence, or if you
Mhm.
see a large number of, young females, or if
Right.
you see a group of people that don't really look like they're, related, or, you just see a whole bunch of traffic going in and out all hours of the night,
Seeing different
obviously
people
that
every
is-
day.
Yeah, that's a red flag for sure.
Absolutely.
So you're telling me that someone that, for example, that comes across as perfect as Miss Mary here and, has no real issues could actually be a secret trafficker that we don't know about.
Not Miss Mary per se, but
Okay. I was just checking.
Well,
I'm clearing your name right now,
Yeah.
Miss Mary. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's an interesting point though that you bring up, Bill, because we were talking off air, I was involved in discovering a child pornography case, and the person that was the perpetrator was a little league coach, thought of highly across the board. Went, I think he was some sort of deacon or something in his church and all that stuff. You just don't know.
exactly.
And I mean, when I discovered it, I was utterly mortified. But ultimately, in the end, they actually traded him out. He basically got away with it
Yeah.
because he was getting stuff from somebody else. So they went up the ladder, and so to speak. He got probation, which, to be honest with you, infuriated me. Is that, and I'm not trying to disparage anybody of it,
No, of
but is
course.
that typical that how that happens? Like, literally, he got probation, and I know what I saw. So each case is different too.
That absolutely it is. Every case kind of ranges. I mean, each charge in and of itself carries its own weight of what class it would be, whether or not it's a misdemeanor or a felony or anything. Like Audrey said earlier, we deal with mostly felonies, and then each one carries a different class. I mean, there have been situations where people have gotten probation or gotten less years than it initially took. It kind of depends on what kind of history they have to begin. I mean,
Yeah,
I've seen that be the
I will
case.
say throughout my time in the Special Victims Unit, in just about every single case I investigated, the suspect hardly ever has a criminal record, typically my interaction with them, my investigation with them is typically the first one of any sort of, serious criminal like allegation. So typically they're not, people that have been in and out of trouble all the time. When we're dealing with sexual assaults or child pornography, it's not what people typically think at all. Oh, that just kicked in randomly.
What you're saying must obviously be very important because it just got emphasized.
I guess it just kicked in
Well,
at the
something
end,
that
yeah.
we do with Citizens Academy with the Brunswick County Sheriff's Office is at the very end of the academy, we kind of go through this whole thing about the special victim that, and Lieutenant did last time. He had a lineup of different pictures of different people, and one was a teacher, one was a police officer, one was a preacher, one, and he pretty much asked, which one do you think is the registered sex offender? And it was every single one of them. So there's no perfect portrait to paint of someone who is capable of something like that.
You said something. You better explain now. What is Citizens Academy?
Citizens Academy. I think that's really more along your lines.
Yeah. So my husband, he works for the Brunswick County Sheriff's Office as well. He's in the impact unit, and they're a community relations division of the Sheriff's Office. And so one of their big projects that they do is Citizens Academy, and it's where citizens of any age can sign up, and they basically go through like a modified version of the an academy that you think of like for law enforcement, and every single week they get to explore and learn about different divisions within the sheriff's office.
So they're the ones that man that citizens patrol truck.
Yes, yes.
So when I get to church, there's one usually parked out.
Yes,
there.
yes. They ask people from the Citizens Academy if they're ever interested in volunteering for the sheriff's office,
Right.
and that's the patrol that you see.
We have a lot of volunteers, and they are
help
some
out a
great
lot.
people.
Yeah.
Yes,
Which
they do.
gives you eyes and ears all around the county.
Absolutely.
And that's never a bad
Because
thing.
they go out and they do special checks on certain places that people, residents have requested us to go out and check, and where they get a chance, they'll go out and check it. And if they see something big, then we come out there.
And the best part is
ready
they're
to go.
trained to look for something odd, and so they know what they're looking for.
Right.
And they know what to do about it,
Yep.
which is good.
It's another great program that your boss has implemented in this county.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
It's like I said to Sergeant Horn the other day. He goes, well, I don't think we have as much trouble here with the human trafficking as they do in New Hanover. And I said, well, that's because you have such a great boss. If they had Sheriff Ingram everywhere, it would be the same.
Right.
Sheriff of the East Coast. Look at that. You're
I'm
getting
telling
promoting
you.
him, man. He's going to get a big raise with that one.
No, John knows how I feel. I think he's awesome.
Oh, but you see,
Awesome.
we remember from one of our dinners, if you're really close, you call him Bill.
Well, I know, but I don't. I never have. You ask him. I never. He's not a Bill.
So I've already learned that if I get pulled over by a deputy, I'm going to say, I'm going to call Bill.
No.
Then they know I know John real well.
Anyway, I was also looking at stats about the 4 states had the highest rating of human trafficking. And of course, New York is at the top.
Mhm.
And then Florida and Texas and California. But one of the states that came up on that list that surprised me was Ohio.
Wow.
And
That's
I went,
Interesting.
that is interesting because that's a state that's kind of nestled in the
Yeah.
middle of the country,
Yeah.
I wonder why they would have such a high percentage of trafficking.
I've never been to Ohio, honestly. I couldn't speak on it. I've never been. I don't know a
Yeah.
whole lot about Ohio or anything
Yeah.
like that. So it's
You do
difficult
have
for
Route
me to speak on
66
that.
going through it.
Well, that's true.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I
But
do think,
That's what it
a
is.
lot of
if you look at all the rest of them, they have coasts,
Right.
okay? And they have main highways
Mhm.
going through them, but not Ohio.
Right.
So that's
Yeah. Like we were talking about earlier up the East Coast. I mean, you have 95, you have ports, you have, it's easy access all the way around, and it's easy to be secret about it.
Or
Yeah.
a good railroad yard.
Or
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
even.
well, I'm going to have to look into that because I'm curious.
I'm interested
I'm
too a little
curious
bit.
too,
I'm-
yeah.
I'm interested too a little bit.
Seriously. Dan, you had a question? Oh, okay. So now you both work in special victims.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And you said that you also work with elder abuse.
Yes, we
ma'am.
do.
And what other abuse was it?
Child abuse, child physical
abuse
abuse.
too?
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Okay. So do we have a lot of that in our county?
It's all your messages popping up on my phone.
Your phone is going to drive us crazy.
It's not a drive, it's a short walk.
I know that we have a lot of elderly in Brunswick County.
Yes.
ma'am.
Because some of our municipalities used to be strictly retirement municipalities.
Yeah, and our numbers, by the way, are interesting because a full 1/3 of our county is 65 or older.
Mhm.
Wow.
And you
Yeah.
compare that to some, for example, New Hanover is only 19% 65 or over.
Right.
So our
Yeah.
issues are different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So elder abuse would be like a family member having one of their elderly relatives living with them and they're not really taking care of them.
That could be, yeah, that would
That's
would be
that's one
considered
aspect of
neglect,
it.
yeah.
Yes.
And what are some of the others?
I mean, they don't necessarily have to live directly with them. The family member could just be a form of a caretaker from them. And they can go about neglecting them financially because sometimes those family members, they have access directly to their finances and will take advantage of the fact that the elderly does not have that access to it. So they're not necessarily providing them with the things that they need, which would essentially be negligence on their part, which is going to be a form of elder abuse by itself.
Wow.
I mean, it goes beyond just physical abuse,
Yeah.
because a lot of people
I'm
who
sure.
require, that care and everything.
Mhm. Yep. And do we have a lot of that?
I don't get a whole lot of
not a
reports
whole
about that
lot,
one.
but I mean, we have a good bit. So we
Mhm.
work hand in hand with Brunswick County Department of Social Services.
Right.
And whenever they receive a report, they're mandated by law to notify law enforcement of the report.
Right.
So they send it to us. And depending on where it is in the county, then it depends on who gets it. And so then that person investigates it along with the social worker.
Right.
I know that there is a good amount of child abuse in this county.
Yes.
And I think you find that anywhere that you have rural areas. I came from a rural area
Mhm.
and we had that very same problem.
I don't think the cities had any shortage of abuse. I've been there.
No, I mean, that's true. But I guess maybe I'm saying the same thing that Detective Moore was saying earlier, that maybe it's not visible,
Right.
Right.
but it sure is here.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so,
and it's not just physical, it could be emotional.
yeah.
It
Absolutely.
could be,
Yeah.
if you will, starving a kid, giving them their own foods,
Yes.
pick anything,
Yeah.
even just not getting to clean up a bit.
The same thing as elder abuse, the child abuse, it goes far beyond just being physically abused.
And sometimes the mental
Right.
abuse is worse than physically.
Yes, sir.
It's long term.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
And I'd say during the COVID pandemic, that was when we saw a really huge influx of child abuse. And I think that was
Wow.
because a lot of people were cooped up in the house and
Exactly.
a lot of, tempers rising and a lot of,
I could see that affecting
frustration.
elderly abuse
Mhm.
too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
I
think
was still on road patrol at that point. We were seeing a lot more domestic violence at that time. So
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just as a curious note, elderly couple, and sometimes there's abuse there between either way, guy, gal. Does that fall into elderly or domestic or both, or where does that go to?
that would fall under domestic.
Domestic.
Yeah.
Okay. Even though there could be 80.
Yes.
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 Okay.
So don't you think that I know that domestic abuse is very, very dangerous for
Mhm.
the officer,
yes, ma'am.
okay? Because they are on high alert. These people are angry.
It's an
Right.
unpredictable situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't you think that the same thing applies if you were to go to check into elder abuse or child abuse?
I think it could.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every
think the-
situation. Could be
It just also
unpredictable.
depends on where you're getting the information.
I think it
It's
depends on the
If
circumstances.
you're in a school, for example, with
Mhm.
child abuse being reported, you got an SRO, you got the detectives coming in, you have a much more secure environment than it's
Right.
one-on-one in somebody's
Sure.
home.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's one thing to take it out of that environment because you're right. A school is a little bit more of a controlled environment. Up at the sheriff's office is more of a controlled environment. So yes, sometimes when you get, those DSS reports and everything, and you go to the house, you don't exactly know what to expect.
No, you don't. Every trip's an experience.
Exactly.
I want to, you kind of touched on this. I want to kind of go a little further with it. Is the job that you do and what you see has got to be unbelievable, pressure wise, emotionally, all that. Do they do anything special for you guys as compared to a typical, let's say, a road officer to help you through that? I got to believe mentally and emotionally, it's got to be tough what you do. I admire you for doing it, by the way.
I mean, we have a lot of resources available to us. The sheriff's office, we have chaplains that we are more than welcome to speak to at any time. I believe that we have therapists or psychologists that are available to speak to us. Because, I mean, before we're even, for example, put on the road patrol or anything like that, we have to go through a psychiatric evaluation. We know that there are people that if we ever feel like we're too overwhelmed, we can always go sit down and talk to somebody, and they'll show us to the appropriate resource to make sure we're taking care
So they
of
take
mentally.
care of you.
And it's
Yes.
not held against
Yeah.
you. Either.
No.
And that's critical.
No, I mean, if you're right that some of the things that we see in SVU is a little bit different than, what others, not saying that what they see is wrong or anything like that, but sometimes it is a little bit different. So of course they wouldn't hold it against us for, needing maybe a little bit of
But
help
the
and
other side
support.
of that coin, when you can affect someone's life in a positive way, it must give you a good feeling.
It's wonderful.
You
Yes.
know, when you know that child or that spouse or that elderly person is in a better environment than they were a day ago,
Yeah.
and you're a piece of that, it's got to give you some satisfaction for doing a job well done.
Yes, sir.
And congratulations on both of you doing jobs well done.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We're really impressed,
Thank you.
even though you haven't arrested him at the end. He abuses me a lot. Oh, wait a minute. I have a rule. If I don't have the fun, I don't take the credit.
I can't thank you ladies enough for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
I believe that anyone who's listening has information now that would be helpful to them. The most important thing to me is the awareness.
Yes, ma'am.
you
And I
know.
think coming out of that, the most important thing you guys said is also, if you're not sure, report it anyway.
Mhm.
And it's not going to be held against you if you're wrong.
Right.
They would rather check out 100 false leads than
Yeah.
miss the one that would have led to someone being hurt.
Absolutely.
So keep that in mind, people.
Mhm.
Keep that in mind. It's important.
Go with your gut.
Absolutely.
Now,
That's
do you
it.
want to
Yep,
you want to
trust
repeat
that gut
those phone
feeling.
numbers again for people?
Yes, please.
So if they have something to report, they
Yes.
can find you.
You may call 1-866-347-2423, and you will be anonymous. You do not have to leave your name. Just tell them what the issue is, and it will be checked into. And 911 for the local sheriff's office. Tell them you'd like to speak with a detective, and he will call you or whatever. Remember, folks, that you could be saving somebody, which is really important. But we have had today Detective Audrey McCray and Detective Christina Moore. And it is a pleasure to meet both of you. And I cannot tell you how much you do for our community. We appreciate you.
And you
very
both are
much.
additionally shining examples of a great department.
Yes.
Thank
You know,
Thank
you
you.
contribute,
Absolutely.
but you have a department that's unlike many I've worked with them over the years.
Yep.
Office.
It's an
Excuse me,
office.
department is in trouble again. I didn't say that. He put that word in my mouth. He
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah.
I'm walking home. It's going to be easier. But anyway, you have an office which is superior to most around this country.
Yes.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
you
very
guys
much.
are, and we've had a number of your colleagues with us over the
Yes.
last year or two,
Mhm.
and you're all one as good. I wouldn't want to separate you and put you all on a list of saying who's better, because it's
We
just very
can't
hard.
do
We all
that.
end up with 5 number ones or 10 number ones. So that's a good
Thank
thing.
you so much.
We thank you guys for
You're all
everything.
wonderful.
And I'm going to give you all a notice that we're working on a day here at Republican Party headquarters where we're going to have a breakfast, and they're going to come back with maybe a friend or two. And we're going to spend an hour or two just talking human trafficking and what people can do about it and making you aware. So that's coming up in the future. We're going to work out a date, and whatever that means. Okay. We're going to work on that date. That's it. We are going to work on a date. Now it's
Okay.
time to say,
Yes.
pay our bills and bring you back later. But we do have fun on this show.
Go for it.
It seems like every other store is now selling CBD in some form or another. But did you know that Wilmington has just one local CBD company? I'm talking about Carolina Pure. Family owned and operated, they are Wilmington's first and only CBD company that makes quality hemp products right here in town, including tinctures, topicals, and pet products. Their hemp is sourced from local farmers and they support area musicians and nonprofits. Check us out at carolinapureshop.com.
Veteran Awareness sponsored by You Are Not Alone. Today's veteran homeless rate is approximately 19,750, and the numbers are declining because of the various veteran programs. If you or a veteran you know is homeless, please call 877-4AID-VET. This is a confidential and toll-free call. From this veteran to other veterans, please be there to help our brother and sister veterans. Again, the number is 1-877-424-3838. And thank you for your service.
This show is also sponsored by Dr. Tony Maglione. Dr. Tony is a cardiologist practicing in Wilmington. He accepts Medicare patients and his office is located across the street from New Hanover Regional Medical Center at 2032 17th Street. The office number is 202-1071. Dr. Tony is an author whose last book is Rules for Conservative Patriots, and it can be purchased on Amazon. His website is www.drtonymag.com.
What a great place we all call home. From colorful sunsets to panoramic coastal views. The best attractions are its people, a community of friends and family. J.K. Summers, attorney at law, recognizes this fact and is proud of his work to protect their rights. Put your trust in him to prepare wills and trusts, real estate transactions, contract and LLC creations, and criminal, traffic, and civil matters. Visit oakislandlaw.com or call 910-253-5572. J.K. Summers, attorney at law.
Was your home damaged by Hurricane Florence or Matthew? Repair, reconstruct, or elevate your home with help from Rebuild NC. Find out if you are eligible for assistance by calling 833-ASK-RBNC. That's 833-275-7262. Or apply now at rebuild.nc.gov/repair.
Well, welcome back, everybody, as we wrap the show up. Believe it or not, that hour went very, very quickly. Mary, there's a part 2 to this. You want to talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. Please join us next week when we will have another guest from the Special Victims Unit, maybe 2. Sergeant Philip Horn will be with us next week, and we will continue our discussion on human trafficking. I just want to say thank you to Greta tonight and TK for all your technical stuff. I love you guys. And my
The
2
two quiet
co-hosts.
The rose between 2 thorns. That's the way we
Yes,
describe
there
it.
it is.
Good night, everybody.
But anyway, tune back next week when you never know what we're going to do because we don't. So hang on there. All Things Brunswick.